Aishwarya, what inspired you to pursue MBA after your graduation in Econ and not some other degree or some other stream?
Can I be honest?
Sure.
Uh, to be honest, I was looking more at uh, career options beyond any master's degree. So I was already pursuing actuarial along with my grad in econ honors, same as you. So, but somehow I felt like I wanted to get into finance, and MBA would be like a better way to get to that kind of a role, other than, compared to an MA in economics or compared to, say, any other stream. And that would give me more variety of options, basically.
Okay. So, since you joined as a fresher, what do you think are the pros and cons of joining a MBA program, being a fresher, like especially for econ freshers?
Uh, I think for an MBA student, having work experience is a much better option. And if you can do, definitely get work experience before you join your B school. As a fresher, I think there were instances where I couldn't relate to something like a conversation that was happening in certain subjects. For example, I remember I spoke to one of my profs that I'm really not able to relate to anything that is being talked about. Okay, you read the case, you have the background, but then there's something that comes with experience. The word itself is very explanatory that you will learn things while on the job, and those will be learning which you really cannot get in the textbooks. So I think that's getting work X, any kind of work X, is definitely recommended because um, college life is very different from your daily average work life. So yeah, did that answer your question?
Yeah. So, what kind of questions do they ask econ freshers in MBA interviews, MBA admission interviews?
I think MBA interviews can go anywhere. I think it depends on how you structure your answers and which topics you lead them on to, because mostly they will start with an introduction kind of a thing. And once they've gotten to know you and you're comfortable, uh, they'll start off with the topic. That topic can be anything in the world. It can be uh, general, current affairs, news, something that's happening. It will be more opinion related though. So for me, sadly, the economics part was shining on my CV. So they started talking about Giffen goods. So they actually really talked about the graphs and why they are called Giffen goods and how would we come to an equilibrium point. So they wanted to see how I think. In one of the other IIM interviews, they talked about a problem. Like there's a tank and there's a fish in the tank. So how would you calculate that? So they don't really, I would say they don't really want an answer, but they want to see how you are thinking.
Thought
And not
process.
just for an economics graduate, but for anybody who's who's sitting for an MBA interview. I think the thought process is very much uh, important for them to understand, because as as a business student, in many cases, like we'll talk about the career options later, but in many cases you are solving problems. So I think that's why they focus a lot. So for me it was economics, and then it moved on to music because of my experience in music, and then they made me sing a song, and yeah, that was pretty much it. But yeah, they also have fun
In
during
your
the interview.
interview.
I actually, so they asked me to explain how Karnataka style was different from Hindustani and how was it different from Bengali style of music. So I had to sing and tell them like, okay, this is the difference. So this is the way you sing in Carnatic style and all that. So, but yeah, I think there's no restriction of topics. It's something that they would definitely ask an economics grad, but definitely would help to brush up your, you know, your subject very well. So I spent about 3 to 4 days before the interviews just reading everything that I had ever learned, like going through things and topics that I had ever learned in my undergrad or in my school. They also asked me about Shakespeare because I was an ICSE student. So they asked me to recite Shakespeare. It was an IIM Core interview. And if you know it, you know it. Like I could do like a few lines there, but yeah, so that kind of tells you how different any interview can be. So yeah, I think be well prepared with your CV and definitely your undergrad material or the job that you've done before. They can ask you any question on it. Definitely, that is a great possibility, but not really, something that has to be restricted to.
Okay, Aishwarya. So since a majority of the batch is from engineering background, so how is your experience as an econ graduate or a non-engineer amongst a majority of engineers?
I think uh, I'll go in two directions in for this question. So one of them is talking about peer learning, and the second one is the difference between your PGP1 and PGP2 or your first year, second year. So one thing I would like to emphasize for an MBA is peer learning. Everybody talks about it, and even I had heard this word peer learning a lot of times before I joined the school, but truly the amount of um, learning that happened in groups or in classroom discussions, or just talking to someone at Rambhai was much much more in magnitude or whatever compared to a classroom learning session. So an MBA, I think, doesn't just prepare you with topics. I think it or subjects. I think it prepares you to be a better something. I don't know, better manager, better person, better, mm, you know, better at managing some stuff. But it's not about what you did before in many cases. So number one, you learn a lot from each other. And there were times when I would reflect on this while working on projects that, oh my God, the way they think, the way my group mates think about something is so different from the way I think about it. And that is why they want to increase the diversity, right? Because if you have a background, you tend to think in that direction because you know it. And that's why the classroom discussions are fruitful, because people can counter each other's points, etc., etc., and you gain a perspective from all of that. So as an econ student, having a lot of engineers around, one, you help them a lot with the eco subjects. And secondly, you had a very different perspective of things. So it's not a bad thing. It's definitely not a bad thing. Secondly, talking about everyone in PGP1 or everyone in their first year has certain courses to take. So that's where your strength comes into play. Like if you already know these things, because I remember the microeconomics course at IMA had 20 sessions. And in 20 sessions, Pragati, they taught us everything we learned in first, second, third year in microeconomics. So they
Right.
brushed over that. And I being, like we've gone through that in 3 years, and we went into the depths of a lot of things in our undergrad. And we were not students who would flunk around. Like we were really people who would really go through everything and be serious regarding studies and all. So I could see like, oh my God, this is an insane amount of syllabus that you have to cover. And so I would just try to help if possible, in any eco courses. That happened only in first year. And there were people, my friends, who knew operations very well, and I had no idea about it. So I would go to them for help, and they would then teach me ops. I would teach them something like a small thing in micro or something. But I think, and then in second year you have your optionals. So didn't matter. You chose your options based on whatever interest you gained. And in first year is more like a very broad study of every subject. So yeah, so being an economics grad is definitely not a bad thing. And it's just that, I mean, people say like, do you, oh, okay, they flunked all 3 years, but people don't. I don't think so. Anyway, that's more of an opinion to that's more of an opinionated statement. I would rather just talk about what really happens, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
I think they cover every subject in 3 months, like be it micro, macro, or econometrics, like whatever we studied in one whole year,
Yeah,
they cover that in like one term of 3 months.
yeah,
But like the difference I see is that they teach everything from a managerial perspective. Like the
correct.
examples are also very managerial oriented
Hmm,
as compared to what we studied from a policy
right.
perspective.
So the examples, the cases, everything is very much, you have to take a decision at the end of it. You have to take into account this theoretical aspect, and then you have to implement it somewhere or things like that. Um, all that is fine, but I think it's a lot to take in. But what they want to teach you is how to apply all this knowledge, and not how to get into the very basics of these theoretical concepts like the labor curve and all of these, the tough ones.
So how does the shortlisting happen for placement? Like what kind of opportunities do econ graduates get versus engineers and other backgrounds?
I think shortlisting, when you fill the form for CAT, you have to basically enter a lot of information, your whole life, into that form. And the shortlisting for every, so firstly you sit for the written exam, the aptitude test. You get a percentile over there. That percentile will form a part of the score, and then there are other factors which are actually at these pointers, and these metrics that they will use for shortlisting is published by every campus, every college. So they will say, okay, so IIM Bangalore focuses more on work X, for example. I mean, it may not be true right now, but it certainly was true in 15. So they would have a higher percentage for your work X. And then, how much marks you've got in your undergrad, your 10th, 12th scores, and hobbies, etc. I don't think hobbies form a part of or any extracurriculars form a part of the um, that point that you get. So that weighted average of all these metrics will give you whether you're in or out for the interview. And that weighted average can be anything, and it is decided per campus. So someone can say that, okay, I don't care about whether the person is uh, fresher or having experience. So i would I wouldn't keep that as a metric. I would rather keep how much they scored in their undergrad. So somebody who has really good experience but wasn't very good in undergrad may not get in, and he may get in somewhere else where work experience is given more priority. So that's how every college does that, and they publish it. So if you want to know about their score schema, you can just go to their website and check it out.
Is there some extra weightage for females or non-engineers to increase diversity?
I don't remember as such that female um, had some kind of gender or your bachelor's is given some priority, it may be done in the way that they have some cutoff marks. So for engineers, you have to have 9.5 CGPA, and for econ grads, you can be above 75 or something like that. So it depends. So for English graduates, for example, in DU, 70% is like really good, right? They don't really get that much. So maybe 70% will lead to, one or two English graduates being selected for this program. But 70% on an economics course where people score higher may, let a lot of eco grads come into that program. So yeah, there are cutoffs as well. So just I didn't remember it earlier, but yeah. So maybe that's how they can, by lowering the cutoff, they may have a bias, or they may, but it's all published. It's not like, nobody tells, oh no, it's everything is published, everything is out
So how does the shortlisting for placements happen?
there. Oh my god, that's a black box. In IMA, we work on the CVs for the first term itself, and then there's a placement committee which manages everything related to your placement. So you're given a mentor, and he will tell you how your CV has to be submitted, all the short write-ups that you have to do, everything. And then there are applications. We do whatever is required. The companies the companies have their own criteria, and we don't know how um, they select students.
So
So
are there different opportunities for econ students and engineering students, or
there are
like does
many different types of companies that can come for an MBA placement. So just from whatever I saw in my years, there's finance, consulting, marketing, general management. So like the likes of Tata, the likes of Godrej, or marketing roles, or FABM candidates have a very specialized kind of. They have different placements. So very agro focused companies also come to hire people from the FABM program, and many startups. So lot of buzz around fintech nowadays. So yeah, I expect a lot of hiring to happen in this domain. What else? Government roles. So sometimes I've seen some people going to Ministry of External Affairs, or any particular office in the central government. Some of them come. I don't remember
do they
exactly all of
go
them, but yeah,
through
some
the
of them.
placement cell, or do they apply externally to ministries?
You can do both. I think Ministry of External Affairs.
They
This
have consultancy
I'm
jobs,
not
I know,
sure
where
if they
people
come for
apply.
placements. Yeah, I think it's external, but it's available. It's like people do that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you opt out of placements and you kind of find your own uh, job.
Yeah, because I've never seen people getting placed through campus placements in ministries.
Yeah,
Or,
I can't recall whether they were in the campus or not, but there are
Mhm.
people who've gone there. Not one, not two, but a few. So that way. So placement selections are a black box. The company does it. You submit everything required, and you get an email if you're selected for interviews. That's it. Some companies also like to have GDs. So you'll be first selected for GD, and then another round of selection for interviews.
Okay. So, what is your job role at Citibank? Like, do you use economics as a part of your job role?
Um, at Citi, I joined as an analyst. So in the MA program, uh, so we were supposed to rotate through different desks for about 2 years, and then we would get allotted like one particular business or one particular trading desk. So I went through several rotations first, multi-asset, credit, FX, and what else? Equities, different asset classes. I am in the equities product and structuring team. So it's a wide um, I really it's kind of been evolving recently, but it's very much related to everything that happens on the linear equity side, trading, structuring, the product itself. How do you offer certain kind of a certain product to the certain investor to a certain investor? So yeah, a lot of different things. Um, if I've used economics, I think I used it most when I was rotating with FX because that asset class is very you tend to read a lot of macro. You have to keep updated with what's happening, any kind of news releases. So it's impacted a lot and it changes very frequently. So keep reading, and then that's actually when I thought that my knowledge of economics was helpful because when you read more, you come across jargons more. So of course, like you can Google it, but with having the knowledge, it just helps you uh, do a better job and or understand it better or more quickly. In other roles, to be fair, I don't think I used the typical theoretical concepts that we learned in economics because a lot of that part of markets is automated already. So on a trading floor, you would, as an analyst, you would rather be, making presentations or doing some kind of analytical back testing. Econometrics was one thing which came useful. So some of those concepts we could understand what to do, what is meant if you're trying to implement a certain model, if you're trying to build a pricing model. So a lot of those things were useful. But I think in my role, which focuses a lot on equities right now and is very data intensive, I would say econometrics does play a role in for me to create models both on Excel or on Python. So a lot of stuff that we now do is a coding exercise. So a lot of things that you're working on, you would like to slowly automate stuff. So I think for eco grads, you have the theoretical knowledge, but you have to implement it at a workplace. You won't be using that particular term or that particular um, theory. You will be building something that uses this theory. So you will have to, draw it in terms of a code. So I think technical knowledge is definitely very, very much needed in this industry right now. So any markets role will be very focused on implementation and building models, building risk, measuring models. So how much is my portfolio risk? How do I express it? How do I hedge it? And how do I make sure that my platform is within a certain risk limit? Or how do I price a portfolio so that um, it gives me positive returns based on all the carry cost that I have on my balance sheet. So all these terms you have to know from before in order to write something which really does it. So yeah, and so theoretical knowledge and knowledge of implementation. So any kind of MS tools are really basic. Excel, Word, PowerPoint, everything is it's kind of assumed that you will know VBA at least. And Python is something that the world is looking at. It has been looking at it for a few years, I think. And eventually, like, we never did any coding in our undergrad, but I'm writing a lot of code nowadays for the last 2 years, because you have to learn it. So, because
That
that's
is
where the world is
inescapable.
going.
Coding is inescapable everywhere. I think be in research, be in corporates, everywhere you have to code.
Everywhere you're dealing with data, you have to learn a language to understand what really, because you can't deal with huge data sets on Excel. That's really waste of your time. So coding skills are very, very, very much a plus. What else? So we spoke about what I do in very much of a nutshell, and what will be helpful for eco grads to learn before they, if they have to sit for a job like this. Anything else? Did I miss anything?
Any tips you have for econ grads who want to like pursue MBA as a fresher?
As a fresher, mm, do a lot of things. So as a fresher, your lack of work experience would be the one metric that doesn't support you in your application. So in lieu of that, do internships, do NGO activity. Your grades are okay. And I mean, if the score is above 80, if the cutoff is 80, or up 80 to 100 is one category, then 83 or 89 are both belonging to that one category. So in terms of your academics, being in the top X% is fine in order to be shortlisted for that particular interview. And then other than that, your experiences matter. And that experience, having those experiences will also help you, one, write anything if they require, participate in GDs if required, because experiences teach you. And secondly, they will also help you to counter position yourself compared to a compared to a person with work ex. So do a lot of activities for a fresher application. So NGO, music, dance, theater, everything. And DU has a lot of it.
A lot of options apart from
A lot of
academia.
options.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Shwarya, thanks for joining. Thanks for taking out time to do this video with me. I hope this video will
Thanks.
be really helpful for a few students who are looking forward to
I,
MBA.
I hope people find it useful. And thank you so much for thinking that I, can help someone. The last thing I'd like to say is that the job you do or the work you do is very different from what you study in a college. So you have to be prepared for that. And education में हमारी बहुत चीजें हैं which are, there's still a lot of shortcomings, but I think through talking and coaching and mentorship, we can bridge that gap. So I definitely say focus on more real life skills than theoretical skills. If you want to be a part of that world, definitely. Yeah.